Hey friends, it's a beautiful day here in New Mexico, and I thought that I would just do this video outdoors, get the sun on my face, as you can see. So, the purpose of this video is to help you friends understand that in light of Watchtower's governing body update number 8, Watchtower, from a ecclesiastical perspective, are well within their right to disfellowship and to shun. It comes right from the Bible itself. And this is one of the reasons why I keep going after the Bible, because it is the playbook of all Christianity. And I just find it amazing to watch other Christians try to crash carts that are manned by Jehovah's Witnesses and try to convince them of other theological concepts that also comes from the Bible. It's just amazing for me to sit and watch and to hear others talk about what they see going on also. So what I want to do is I want to backtrack a little bit to a Watchtower, April 1st, 1983. And it was a study article entitled, "Serve Loyally as Fellow Workers in the Truth." Now, as Jane Doe recently put out in a video, decades ago, Watchtower went out of their way to not have themselves identified as a religion. They were a company, they're a society, and things of that nature. But when that 501c3 started coming along, and Watchtower was challenged with having to pay taxes, well, they elected to become a religion so they could qualify for the 501c3 and be tax exempt. And they obviously considered themselves a charitable organization. But as Jane Doe brought out, when all of that was going on back then, they had to requalify themselves as a religion and preface the word true religion to continuously maintain that separation from other Christian denominations. So what I want to do is I want to read a little bit from this study article, because in this particular study article they refer to Diotrephes. Now, in the book of 1, 2, 3 John, Diotrephes appeared to be someone standing up against the teachings of the Apostle Paul. So let me go ahead and read this. I'm going to be reading paragraphs 14, 15, 16, and 17, and now I'm going to read some information from the book, The New Testament, by Stephen L. Harris, okay? Because there's a small section regarding the Johannine community that's portrayed in 1, 2, 3 John. And it's actually quite eye-opening, and it should even be more eye-opening to mainstream Christian religions, not just Watchtower, but everybody. So let me begin by reading these paragraphs from the 1983 April 1st Watchtower, and how ironic, this is an April 1st issue. And under the heading, "Loyal Support Despite Opposition." Gaius was serving loyally as a fellow worker in the truth, but opposition was being encountered. For John stated, "I wrote something to the congregation, but Diotrephes, who likes to have the first place among them, does not receive anything from us with respect. That is why, if I come, I will call to remembrance his works, which he goes on doing, chattering about with wicked words. Also, not being content with these things, neither does he himself receive the brothers with respect. and those who are wanting to receive them he tries to hinder and to throw out of the congregation. Now, bear in mind, the Apostle Paul also made a statement that if someone brings you a Jesus other than what we taught, reject them. So each one of these Christian denominations today, they all have their own version of Jesus. So with these scriptures in this article in mind, every Christian should be rejecting every Christian based upon what's written here in 1, 2, 3 John. And that's why they go around trying to convert every other Christian religion into their belief system, because they all believe that they're all teaching a different version of Jesus, and in some respects, they are. Okay? Going on, paragraph 15. John had previously written something to the congregation, but arrogant Diotrephes received nothing from the apostle with respect. Actually, presumptuous Diotrephes liked to have the first place among fellow believers. He wanted to be their leader. Well, how is that any different than Watchtower taking the parable of the faithful and discreet slave, providing food at the proper time, and proclaiming themselves as the faithful and discreet slave? Does that not make them assume the position of being leaders? Of course, because if you don't accept what Watchtower teaches, or you try to question what Watchtower teaches, like Diotrephes, he throws them out of the congregation. Watchtower is just doing what the Bible has already put in progress. Going on. So this proud man was out of harmony with Jesus, who told his disciples, "All you are brothers. Neither be called leaders, for your leader is one, the Christ." Well, as I just stated, if you're all brothers, then why does Watchtower become your leader? Why are you afraid to stand up to this governing body if you're all brothers? Well, because you know what the end result will be. Based on Scripture, you will be thrown out of the congregation. Going on. Of course, since haughty eyes and an arrogant heart are sin, and Jehovah knows the lofty one only from a distance, any professing Christian who is like Diotrephes today has no intimate relationship with God. Do you understand, Watchtower? Let me reread what you wrote. Because remember, Diotrephes was throwing people out of the congregation because they disagreed with him. But this is what you wrote. Of course, since haughty eyes and an arrogant heart, are sin, and Jehovah knows the lofty one only from a distance, any professing Christian who is like Diotrephes today has no intimate relationship with God. Based upon what they wrote here in 1983, why do you Jehovah's Witnesses still fear your governing body? They wrote it right here. And they're using the example of Diotrephes, which when I get to the Bible, I will show that what Diotrephes is doing is exactly what the Bible mandates and or Paul mandated for them to do. Throw anybody out of the congregation who does not believe in the Jesus that Paul was preaching. Going on. Not by receiving anything from John with respect, Diotrephes was rebelling against God-given authority. But Watchtower, your authority is based on a parable, not God-given. Hence, if the aging apostle came to the congregation, he would call to remembrance the evil deeds of Diotrephes, as well as what he was saying. Diotrephes was chattering about John with wicked words, thus maligning one to the apostolic foundation stones of heavenly New Jerusalem. Surely he could not do that with impunity, nor can professing, and I'm going to insert the word true Christians, although Watchtower refrains from using that in the sentence structure, but I'm going to insert it. Nor can professing true Christians today expect to escape God's adverse judgment if they unrepentantly slander fellow believers and disregard divinely constituted authority. So how is it, Watchtower, that you are unrepentantly still calling us apostates, liars, slanderers, with zero proof? Because everything we say and do comes right from your own literature. This is what true Christians do today, according to their literature. Final paragraph, 17. Diotrephes also refused to receive the diligent traveling brothers hospitably. In fact, he was trying to hinder others who desired to extend hospitality to the visiting evangelizers. Worse still, Diotrephes was attempting to throw hospitable and loving individuals out of the congregation by having them disfellowshipped wrongly. But in the face of all this opposition, loyal Christians were undeterred in supporting kingdom preaching activity. What kingdom preaching activity, Watchtower? You didn't exist back then. So do you friends see what they're doing? They're using a modern day Watchtower language in these articles to make you people think and believe that way back then they were preaching kingdom messages. Watchtower, there was no theocratic language back then as you describe it. But hey, I got it figured out. Your followers don't. Okay, so what I want to do now is read a little bit from the book, The New Testament by Stephen Harris. I'm going to try to get a little bit closer. There's just a slight breeze and a little bit of traffic picking up. So, apologize for that, but here we go. Found on page 272, letters from the Johannian community. Following the canonical order in the Latin Vulgate, most English Bibles place 1, 2, and 3 John among the Catholic general epistles. So, Watchtower, as much as you bash the Catholic Church and their teachings, why are you using their Bible in place? You don't get it. They don't get it because they don't study, they don't research. Going on, because these 3 letters ascribed to John, 1 John is actually an essay or tract, deal with many of the same theological motifs as the gospel. Most scholars conclude that they also originate in the distinctive Johannian community. In other words, they originate not with the Apostle Paul or the Pauline scriptures. These are the Johannian community we're now talking about, which took up the same practice as the Apostle Paul in excommunicating people because they didn't believe in the same Jesus that they did, or they dare question the whole theological motif. And remember, friends, theological motifs is just a fancy word for, in theory, Jesus is God in the flesh. In theory, we're told not to accept anybody who doesn't believe in our Jesus. In theories are not facts. Fact is, guys, I'm reading to you. That's a fact, because you can see it. But when somebody tries to tell you that, in theory, Jesus is God in the flesh, you've never seen him. All you have is thousands of years of the same motif. That goes all the way back to Egypt and even more ancient times beyond that. Okay? So the rest of this goes on and talks about the internal threat regarding the Johannian community. Okay? So I'm going to skip down a little bit on page 273, and I'm going to read the next subheading, which is a response to Gnosticism. Some commentators suggest that the cessationists who John denounced were proto-Gnostics, who taught that Christ was pure spirit, uncontaminated by association with physical matter, presumably even during his earthly life. Going on, these scholars speculate that the writer's adversaries espoused from the Docetism, arguing that the Christ only seemed to be human. In truth, he was a celestial being who descended from heaven to reveal cosmic secrets of immortality, and who temporarily appeared as Jesus, but who escaped physical death by reascending to the realm of ethereal spirit, the realm of ether, spirit, back to the spirit realm. In interpreting John's gospel about the pre-existence Jesus in a way that refuted his extreme position, the elder decisively set theological limits to understanding the incarnate Christ's divine nature. Oh, you mean they're censoring? Oh, the Bible censors people. You just can't make this up, guys. You just can't make it up. I've said it once and I'll say it before. This is the playbook. Okay? Now, I'm going to point out, because I'm going to skip down. My battery's going a little low, but I'm going to skip down to the next subheading, the issue of sin. Because what Christians don't realize that when they try to defend the Bible, they're actually defending contradictions. Considering the cessationists and the promulgators of false doctrine and as sinners, the elder devotes considerable space to the problem of sin, which he defines as lawlessness and willful breaking of divine commandments. In his initial discussion of sin, he categorically states that anyone, now remember, categorically means states without any confusion. It's categorically correct. This is what he does. I'm going to start over. In his initial discussion of sin, he categorically states that anyone who claims to be sinless is self-deceived, because all people sin. He then reassures believers that Jesus, who functions as the remedy for the defilement of all sin, can be trusted to forgive the sinner. And you'll find that essay at 1 John 4 through 2 John 2. Later in his essay, however, the writer apparently contradicts himself when he declares that a child of God does not commit sin. A Christian cannot be a sinner because he is God's child. Conversely, the man who sins is a child of the devil. Right there, 2 John contradicts himself. So, what I decided to do, for argument's sake, is to read that in the New World Trash Translation. Okay? Let's see here. 2 John, let me find it here real quick. Okay, it's 1 John 3, 9 and 10. Everyone who has been born from God does not carry on sin, because his reproductive seed remains in such one, and he cannot practice sin, because he has been born from God. The children of God and the children of the devil are evident by this fact. Everyone who does not carry on righteousness does not originate with God, neither does he who does not love his brother. Okay? I decided to cross-reference that scripture with the King James, the authorized King James Version, the 1611 real Bible, because I found it interesting that the quotation in the book by Stephen L. Harris does not use the word practice or carry on sin, excuse me. So I decided to get that from the King James. And let's note something. See, Watchtower had to change the wording so that their Bible appears not to contradict itself, whereas the 1611 King James, it very much does, because they use a different word. 1 John 3, 9 and 10. Whosoever is born of God doth not commit sin, for his seed remaineth in him. He cannot sin, because he is born of God. In this, the children of God are manifest, and the children of the devil, whosoever doeth not righteousness is not of God, neither he that loveth not his brother. So I find it interesting that the Watchtower Society changed the wording from whosoever is born of God does not commit sin. That means you're sinless, doesn't it, friends? Whereas the Watchtower Society puts it this way: everyone who has been born from God does not carry on sin. And that's where Watchtower gets away from, well, yeah, we're all sinners, but we don't practice sin. Whereas the King James Version just plainly says you don't commit sin. In other words, you're not sinless. But yet, earlier, as I read in the book from Stephen L. Harris, every man sins. It's a clear contradiction. Or at the very least, when they were putting together the 1611 King James, the editors weren't quite as scrupulous about word connection, were they? It's not hard, friends. It's pretty easy. All you got to do is just pick up the books and read them. See, now I want to read the last paragraph under that same header with the same heading, Letters from the Johannine Community. The elders' harsh methods to control the spread of what he considers false teaching may have seemed necessary to him, but the general adoption of his exclusionary tactics in the later church, when bishops, overseers of a whole region, tended to exercise iron discipline over their flocks, is ethically problematical. The elders' approach to church authority thus presents a troubling paradox in theological history. A community founded on the principle of mutual love later became rife with dissension that triggered a most unloving response. Disfellowshipping, excommunication, shutting down anybody's dissenting voice or somebody that might have a different approach to the subject. But yet we see that same thing throughout all of Christendom today. Some to a more extreme way of doing it, like Watchtower, and some to a lesser extreme, such as maybe the Catholic Church. Guys, it's not difficult to see where Watchtower is getting their extremism from. And I don't care whether you hold up the King James, the New World Translation, they all promulgate the same message. Control, control, control. And they will lie about ex-members when they dare speak out, and then they use the Bible as their authority to kick them out of the congregation. And the courts of this world have little to no choice but to uphold what they do, because it's freedom of religion. So they say. So I've said it once, and I'll say it here before my battery goes completely dead. If you're going to fight Watchtower in a court of law, do not use their playbook. You need to go after them from a corporation perspective. The corporation is what you need to fight them on. Thanks for watching, and may you have a blessed day. Bye.